So the problem with the documentation is that you need to do it as you're going, because otherwise you miss vital steps. So let's just make sure that we have the basics of what to do before you start documenting. Now, when you're figuring out how to do something, that is the time you should be documenting it, not afterwards. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to open up whatever document you're going to record your notes in. Word or Notepad works well for me, or Notepad++ actually. And then any websites I visit, I copy stuff from. I post in what I've copied and the website. Any URLs that I read to help me figure out the problem, I put them in the documentation, just copy and paste them in. Any commands I type, and then I use Greenshot to take screenshots of anything where, if there's only do it, so you don't need to document stuff where you just press next, next, next. But say there's in an interface on an application, there's like 50 different options and you change 8 of them for some reason. You need to tick the ones that you've changed, because that means 2 things. First of all, you've changed it from the default, which is never a great idea. But when you're looking at it later or trying to replicate it, you can see which things you've changed. If you're trying to go through support, they go, well, what settings did you set? You can say, well, I've got a screenshot. I did this one, this one, this one. And obviously, if you then go back and change stuff later, you can then take a new screenshot and replace that one. The point here is that you're not trying to create a step-by-step comprehensive document. You're trying to create something so if you go away for 2 days, come back, you can see where you left off. Because it's very easy to go, oh, of course I'll just remember this, but you don't. You think you do, but you don't. Now, when you finish doing the thing, I like just to paste that entire thing into the bottom of the documentation document. And at the top, I'll list off the major steps that are involved. If it's complicated, I include screenshots. Another great tool is, if you're going to do it again, just run up Loom, which is free, by the way. I wish I got commission. And run Loom, and then just step through the process. And then somebody else could just watch your video. It's easy. You don't need to have great video skills. Just next, 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 next. The problem with a lot of documentation is people think it has to be finished. And obviously, if you're producing commercially viable documentation for products and you're being paid for it, it does have to be finished. But all of that stuff of spelling, checking, tidying it up, making it look pretty, that's just eating into your time. Because what you're trying to do is make it so you or a colleague can quickly get up to speed. And by having these notes, I've looked at notes I created 3 years more previously. It's incredibly helpful just to kind of see the steps that I went through. And then you go, oh yes, okay, I see how to do this. So I'm looking at the documentation and I'm looking at the notes from what I did. And it's like, okay, this makes sense. I need to change this, da 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 da. Saves hours and hours of messing around. Like I mentioned in my Time Vampire video. So easy just to waste a lot of time doing the same thing, exact thing, multiple times when you could have just automated it. And this is all about automating things and not spending more time than you need to. Don't think of it as like, oh, I'm going to spend the next month creating this massive documentation library. You're not. You're too busy. But the documentation, first of all, is for you. Then it's for your person that's going to be doing it after you. So if you've got a junior person, you're going to need to tidy up a little bit. What I like to do is, if I'm looking at something one day and then a day or two later I'm looking at it again, go back through my documentation and just work through it, because there's always steps that you've missed, like making a cup of tea. And obviously, that's the other thing, is to say to people, this is a living document. If it doesn't make sense or it's not, you can't follow it, edit it, add to it. And hopefully, over time, your documentation will become a library of a lot of stuff. Then you're going to have to sort it out and organising it. That's quite a fun exercise as well. So at the moment, I've got lots of videos on how you, if somebody says, I want a new computer, what is the process for quoting for it, getting it ordered, moving it to their offices, getting it set up. So I've just started creating a checklist for all these things that we can follow. And what's really interesting is there's loads and loads of documentation on this already, but it's very scattergun. So I'm going to nurture all this documentation together so we've got a step-by-step process. And if you want to know more detail of each step, you can click on the Loom video and watch it. But most of the time, people don't need to do that because they've already done it several times. So my advice with documentation is get started immediately before you do anything. Don't make it complicated. You're documenting for yourself. I hope that's of some use. Please like and subscribe. If you've got any other tips, comments, comment below. And thanks so much for watching, and speak to you soon. Cheers.